Hey, hi everybody, this is April DePriest. I'm here to talk about an anti-inflammatory diet today. And before we get started, active members, for credits towards LMHF Wellness Program Part 2, you must watch the videos in its entirety and comment on the video with your name. Once confirmed by LMHF, your comments and your name will be removed. Alrighty? So that's for your credits, and we'll get started today talking about an anti-inflammatory diet. So just an overview, we're going to talk about, what is inflammation anyway? How might inflammation affect your health? Anti-inflammatory diet examples. So I'll go through and talk about like some really popular diets that are out there that would count. If you were interested in looking at those, we'll talk about the foods with the most antioxidants. I'll go into a little bit of physiology to explain how antioxidants affect inflammation and kind of the difference between what's going on an atomic level versus a cellular level versus a systemic level. But it's all really easy stuff, and then I'll give you some really quick, easy, healthy meal ideas or snack ideas. So from there, I'm going to go into talking about what is inflammation anyway. So this, if you go through and you're looking at the slides, this is really information from Harvard's, health letter. So I have a few interviews in here as well. But inflammation is really your body's natural response to protect itself against harm. So there's two types. There's acute and there's chronic. So when we're thinking acute, it's like something that happens like one time and right away. Chronic is something that persists. It goes on and on. So an acute inflammation might happen like if you hit your finger with a hammer. It turns red, or if you cut your finger, with a knife, a kitchen knife, you have some red inflammation and irritation there. And that's really just happening because your immune system dispatches a bunch of white blood cells to go and try to make sure that we don't have any infection, and to protect the area. So you're going to have visible redness and swelling. It works similarly if you're infected like with a flu virus or any kind of virus or bacteria. Inflammation is essential. Without it, if you got hurt, if you cut your finger, it would fester, you would die. Or infections also, a flu would be deadly because your immune system is what protects you against those things. So chronic inflammation, so that's acute inflammation. Chronic inflammation is an ongoing destructive process when it doesn't turn off like it should. So let's see, once your finger starts healing and you've got a good scab and your body's going through the healing process, you have less and less inflammation. If you've ever sprained an ankle, it blows up, you have a lot of swelling, and then it takes weeks, sometimes it takes months for it to really heal. But that inflammation comes down and goes away. There are conditions where our body just loves producing inflammation for whatever reason, and it can be a lot of health issues, and I'm going to talk about those. And so chronic inflammation is damaging because it's like a slow burning fire, and it's continuing to stimulate pro-inflammatory cells that will continue to attack the healthy areas of your body. So some examples of this are like alopecia, for example. A lot of times, like, people will have some hair loss or bald spot because their body is acting like that hair follicle is like a foreign invader and it's killing them off. There are a lot of other examples we'll get into that are much more severe and detrimental to our health. So chronic inflammation can occur anywhere in your body. Plenty of research indicates that it's a common trigger for multiple chronic diseases like diabetes and heart disease. For example, excess immune cells and their signaling molecules circulating in your system can damage your blood vessel linings, like in atherosclerosis, can damage pancreatic tissue in diabetes, joint tissue and arthritis. Brain tissue, you have things like Alzheimer's or mood disorders. So what kinds of conditions, can contribute to chronic inflammation? Well, having a really poor Western diet can contribute to chronic inflammation. Why? Because we sort of, 1,000 years ago, you didn't have an endless access to calories that were high in fat and sodium and sugar. And it just didn't exist. And we had to expend a lot of energy to get in, hopefully enough energy to survive. So our body developed, storage mechanism for calories, and that was fat. And we had to use it all the time. And now we don't even have to, you just push a button to wash your clothes, and we don't have to expend hardly any energy. And we're able to take in way too much energy all day long. So it's partly just how we're built. Other things that can contribute to chronic inflammation are other factors, especially in women, once we sort of have hit that perimenopause state and we're losing estrogen. Estrogen happens to be a pretty powerful weapon against inflammation, and once it's gone, we have a harder time with it. So that's something to consider as well. But chronic inflammation can also occur in response to unwanted substances in your body. So things like cigarette smoking, excess body fat cells, we talked about that already. When we've accumulated enough body fat to sort of have your body look at its fat stores as its own organ, it will start to release signals that tells your body to store more fat. It starts working as an endocrine gland, and it actually puts our body into something called metabolic disorder, metabolic disease. So that can cause more inflammation. Inside arteries, inflammation can help to kick off atherosclerosis. So let's say you've got a buildup of maybe sugar and fat on your artery walls. Your immune system looks at that as something that's dangerous, so it'll start to try to wall it off. And in situations where this gets broken off, this plaque that has been formed breaks up, you might have these clots, circulating in your bloodstream. That can be very dangerous. That's where most cardiovascular disease comes from. So, and that can cause not just heart attacks, but strokes. So that's a major issue. And it's something that we see a lot with smokers and postmenopausal women. So this is something that we need to think about, and something that we can kind of temper with exercise. I'm not going to talk to you a lot about exercise today for once, and diet. So today we're talking about diet. So symptoms of chronic inflammation. You might have generalized pain in your muscles, in your joints, things that are associated with intermittent swelling. Doesn't always have to be swollen, like swollen knuckles, things like that, and stiffness. A dull, achy sort of pain in nature, you can kind of go back and have your doctor assess if he thinks that it's inflammation, or she thinks that it's inflammation. Fatigue, so a constant fatigue associated, sometimes it can be associated with insomnia, so trouble sleeping or poor quality sleep. Sometimes just fatigue, because your immune system, which is causing this inflammation, remember we said that it's the same thing as if you cut yourself or you bang your knee, your body goes in to try to repair that. Your immune system actually is part of this inflammatory response. So, and it requires a great deal of energy. So you might not be able to access your energy stores very well if your body's busy thinking that it's fighting off a whole bunch of other stuff. So fatigue is a big factor. Depression and anxiety are also symptoms. Inflammatory cells and molecules within your central nervous system can disrupt metabolism in mood-related transmitters, neurotransmitters. Also, you might have symptoms like gastrointestinal pain, abdominal pain, constipation, diarrhea, acid reflux is another big one, things like that. So if that's something something that you think that you're dealing with, definitely go to your doctor. Don't just go try to cure it with diet, but diet, this particular type of eating is healthy for everyone and anyone, regardless of your inflammatory state. So I'm going to go briefly review this stuff, and this is all, again, from the Harvard Health Letter. The inflammation drains your body's energy and resources and leaves it more vulnerable, especially women. And this isn't that we just are always fighting this uphill battle, especially after we hit like 35 years old. Especially once you're if you're in a hyper-inflammatory state and you're low in estrogen, your body has even less ability to access energy because estrogen is tied tightly with that. It's tied tightly with your immune system. So these are all big issues. When it's chronic, inflammatory cells are really powerful. They help, to get rid of invaders. They help to sort of cure your illnesses. And when a constant low-grade flow of strong inflammatory markers is released into your bloodstream, with time it can cause damage. Once the balance, the sort of start cycle of that is disrupted, inflammatory hyperactivity can perpetuate. So it's this ongoing cycle. And that can quickly spiral into disease like heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's. Those are things that we've already talked about. So, can we measure inflammation? Yeah, so there are a few measurements we go by. The one that we see the most is really looking at called C-reactive protein. If I have to go get, if you're part of this program and you go get your physical and you have to get your blood work done every year, that's usually something that they'll look at on it. But it's not necessarily important for everybody. Like if you're a young, healthy person with no issues, you don't necessarily need to know your inflammatory markers. C-reactive protein is the one that we see most commonly tied with heart disease. So they found that people with the greatest degree of arterial inflammation benefited the most from aspirin, which helps to prevent blood clots, damps down inflammation in your bloodstream. So with C-reactive protein, you might get something like, if it's really high, the doctor might tell you to go on something like a baby aspirin, or you might take a statin, which does something very similar. So many doctors, if you're not one of the people who goes and gets these tests done yearly, your doctor might not care to look at your inflammatory markers because you've already had your heart disease assessed and you're already taking care of it. So that wouldn't be, very important. If you have heart disease, you should already be taking your medications to lower your heart attack risk, such as cholesterol-lowering drug. Statins work a lot like aspirin. So, one study even showed that statins reduce the risk of death in people with average cholesterol levels, but with high C-reactive protein levels. So if you're middle-aged or beyond and have signs of looming heart trouble, like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or a family history of heart disease, knowing your CRP might nudge you towards doing things that are more helpful to reduce your inflammation, like exercise and diet, which we're going to talk about next, or quitting smoking, or maybe if you have weight to lose, it might help you do that as well. Okay, so for women especially, the sort of perimenopause and menopause will put our bodies into a much higher inflammatory state. So the nutritional tricks that we're going to talk about next really should apply to us a lot. Like no matter what other health markers you have, like you could be super healthy and a marathon runner, and this would be something that you should think about incorporating in your life. Maintaining health at this time should include stress management techniques as well as anti-inflammatory measures such as exercise, which is really the most powerful anti-inflammatory in the world. There's not even a drug that you can get that'll give you the same sort of benefits as regular exercise, and I don't think there ever will be. And nutrition, which is, I'll finally get to that. I do want to say for women that I'm telling you now that exercise is more important. But we want to make sure that we're dosing it accordingly. So if you're coming from a place where you haven't exercised, don't think that you need to go out and, jump on this wagon and do, an hour of exercise every day. That might throw you into an even more inflammatory state, because now you've asked your body to do a whole lot, and it's going to try to recover, and it's going to, throw you back a few steps. So accept where you are and just start small if you have to, but do try to exercise and dose it according to, what is comfortable for you. So let's get into the anti-inflammatory diet. So things that the Harvard Health Letter tells us that we should eat are vegetables, fruits, very healthy. A lot of times people ask me, are fruits really healthy? What about the sugar? People always say that. The sugar in fruit is pretty inconsequential to the rest of your overall health, because it's tempered by fiber, and it comes with a lot of antioxidants and a lot of phytonutrients and things that actually help you to lose weight and help to keep inflammation down. So the sugar that we see in fruit, and if you go and if you use one of those apps like MyFitnessPal, this one makes me mad. I love MyFitnessPal, but MyFitnessPal counts every ounce of sugar in a carrot and tells you, oh, you were supposed to stay under this. You don't need to worry about that. So no, the sugar in fruit will not hurt you. So vegetables, fruits, seeds, legumes, nuts, potatoes. Potatoes are good, especially if you leave the skins on. And I'm going to talk a lot about fruits and vegetables with their skins on, and how to prepare them in ways that will release more antioxidants and make them even healthier. Whole grains, breads, herbs, spices, fish, seafood, extra virgin olive oil. So the darker the bottle your extra virgin olive oil comes in, and the fresher it is, the more peppery the taste. Some people don't like that. If you like it, that's the stuff for you. That's going to have the most antioxidants in it and the most goodies. If you like a more benign oil, still that's fine. Don't eat things that you hate. But still opt for an extra virgin olive oil that you find palatable. Things you want to eat in moderation. So those were all the things that are really good and help with inflammation. So you'll notice the proteins are things like beans, legumes, fish, seafood, and if I didn't say nuts and seeds yet, nuts and seeds. Things that you want to eat in moderation are things that also have protein. So I'll take a look at those. So moderation, this is a few times a week. Poultry, eggs, cheese, and yogurt, all high in protein. But for whatever reason, certain animal products, especially ones that are factory produced and not pastured, do cause more inflammation in our bodies. Things to eat only rarely are something like red meat. If you are going to have red meat, on your special occasions, try to find something that's maybe go to your local farmer's market or a local farm, and maybe get yourself some free range, local beef. That'll be a lot better. You'll have a lot more antioxidants in the fat of that beef than you will when you just get it at the grocery store, and those cows kind of grew up in a factory and ate basically cornflakes. Not as healthy for you. Things that you don't want to eat are sugar-sweetened beverages, added sugars, processed meat, so that's things like sausages, all the things that you like to put on your charcuterie platter, like summer sausage or Genoa salami, things like that are not good. Refined grains, refined oils, and other highly processed foods. So like Jack LaLanne says, if man makes it, I don't eat it. So I think that's a good way of, kind of weeding out the things that you shouldn't eat. And other people might call this eating clean. And sometimes people get stressed out because they feel like it takes out a lot of simple options, or it takes out a lot of variety. And if you're one of those people, I would say just start slowly weaning the things that you really like out of your diet that shouldn't be there. So I'll go into more detail about foods to avoid really quickly. So we talked about added sugar. Some examples of that are soda, candy, ice cream, table sugar, and many others. Now, if you're the type of person that likes to have a cup of coffee in the morning with a teaspoon of sugar in it, I wouldn't stress over that. You could always try putting honey in it or something like that, but I wouldn't stress over that. If you're the sort of person that, after dinner you like to have a piece of shortbread and dunk it in your tea, I wouldn't worry about that. I would be more concerned about the chronic intake of this sort of thing. Like, if you come in your house and you've got like boxes of cookies and all of your snacks or something that came prepackaged, that's the type of thing that we're trying to avoid. Refined grains you also want to avoid. So that's white bread, white pasta, anything that's made out of a white refined flour. Basically, if it's white, it ain't right. You want to look for a whole grain, and we'll talk about where to find that stuff. Other foods to avoid are trans fats. So you'll find those in a lot of baked goods. You'll find them in like Crisco, things like that. Refined oils, so or an omega-6 oil. So this is kind of could have been labeled better. So anything that's like a vegetable oil or a soybean oil is going to be really high in omega-6s, and it's probably refined. Even if you're looking for coconut oil, a lot of times, it comes solid because it's a saturated fat. If you get the kind that you can pour, and you can pour it even if you've left it in your closet or your pantry, that has been fractionated and it's actually pretty refined and not really very healthy for you anymore. So if you're going to use coconut oil, I would use it sparingly, just like I would use butter sparingly, and I would make sure that it's not liquid at room temperature. So oils that you do want to look for are things like, remember we said olive oil? If you're not into that, you could always use a canola oil. Canola oil is higher in omega-3. It's pretty inexpensive. It's got a really kind of benign flavor. You can use it for sauteing a lot of things, so that's a good one. Also want to avoid processed meats like hot dogs, sausages, a lot of lunch meat. Anything that's labeled low-fat diet or looks like it was made in a factory. Like, those are the type of foods that we want to sort of stay away from. And you kind of have to read your food labels carefully if you want to avoid these things, or you just buy food that came out of the ground and you eat that. So why are we avoiding these foods again? Some foods that are associated with an increased risk of diseases like type 2 diabetes and heart disease are also associated with increased inflammation. Unhealthy foods also contribute to weight gain, which can contribute to inflammation. And so you have this sort of twofold issue. And a lot of research was done to sort of determine whether or not, is it just this food is an unhealthy weight-causing food and it's the extra weight gain that's causing inflammation? And the answer was no. We found that these foods actually create, in and of themselves, more inflammation in our bodies. So above and beyond caloric intake. So it's like a double whammy. So we talked about that, and now we'll talk about foods that fight inflammation. So what does an anti-inflammatory diet do? So we're going to reiterate some of this stuff a little bit. Your immune system becomes activated because your body recognized something that was foreign. Maybe it was a microbe, maybe it was pollen or a chemical. This process will trigger inflammation. When this inflammation persists day in and day out, your body's actually attacking itself. Major diseases that plague us like heart disease, cancer, diabetes, arthritis, depression, Alzheimer's, have all been linked to chronic inflammation. So by using food to reduce inflammation, and these are all foods that we have shown to have anti-inflammatory effects for a couple of reasons, and we'll talk about that. We'll reduce our risk of illness, and if we pick the right foods, that'll reduce inflammation. It'll actually reduce the harm done by free radicals, so it'll stop inflammation before it can start. You'll reduce your risk of illness. Constantly picking the wrong food, so all the things I just spent the last 5 minutes talking about, will do the very opposite. It's just like shoveling inflammation into your bloodstream. Okay, so we'll talk about that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, for a minute, before I get into listing like the top 20 foods with the highest amount of antioxidants, I'll go into just explaining the difference between an antioxidant and something that's an anti-inflammatory. So an antioxidant is something that is really on a molecular scale or like an atomic scale. So if you've got a free radical in your body, which you might have gotten there from too much sun exposure, from damage that was done for any reason, maybe pollution, maybe you smoke, could be any reason. This molecule, an antioxidant, is going to go calm that guy down. So for instance, vitamin C. Everybody knows that, if you take vitamin C, you don't get as many colds. Well, vitamin C goes and it sort of attacks, not necessarily the invading body. So like if you're catching a cold, it's not going to go after the germ. It's going to go after the inflammation. It's going to go after the molecule that's causing inflammation. So a free radical, I usually explain like this. It's an oxygen species that's like missing an electron. And when you take an electron away, you have something that's like hyperactive, like a little dog that yips and bounces, or like a really drunk person at a bar acting crazy. This is a good example. So you've got your reactive oxygen drunk person at the bar who's irate. Your vitamin C is the bouncer that comes in and ties them up, puts their hands behind their back, and gets them standing there. So vitamin C is a pretty powerful antioxidant. But coupled with something like vitamin E, now vitamin E will be the police that come and put the guy into the cop car and take him away. So they do not stop the systemic inflammation that's happening. They prevent it before it starts. So just on a sort of scientific level, I think that people, when they know the sort of form and function of what they're doing, we make better decisions for our own health. So I just love explaining those things. So antioxidants are what happen on a molecular or an atomic level. And then the inflammatory response is really this system. It's a systemic response. And there's all kinds of markers that come in and try to clean up and get everything going away. So if you look at your antioxidants as like stopping the damage before it can start, it's like before this drunk person can set the bar on fire, you're getting him out of there. Okay? So then I'll give you a couple of pointers before I go through this list. People love lists. So before I go through this list, I'm just going to give you a few pointers. I've talked to you about antioxidants, which are usually things that are really colorful in our foods, but not always, so I'll talk about that too. We get more antioxidants out of the part of the food that it actually makes antioxidants and enzymes to protect itself. And a lot of times that's the part of the food that people like to peel off. So a part of a potato that has the most antioxidants and enzymes that will help to prevent this damage before it starts are in the peel. Apple peels, like even your berries, it's in the, not that people peel berries, but you're gonna find it in the peel. Other things, like if you're making a salad out of greens, when you tear a piece of lettuce, you do a lot more damage to all the individual cells in that piece of lettuce. And those cells begin to release the same kind of thing that your body releases when you cut yourself. So you've got all these enzymes and antioxidants coming out, trying to heal the poor cells. And this might sound cruel, but it's lettuce and I'm gonna keep eating it. If you tear your lettuce leaves, you're gonna wind up with more antioxidants than if you slice it up neatly with a knife. So there's a lot of things that you could do to sort of increase or bring out the antioxidant power in your vegetable and fruits and vegetables. And one of those things is to leave the peels on, because the peel is the barrier between sort of the inside of that fruit and the sun and pollution and everything that's going on. So that's got a lot of really powerful antioxidants in it as well, or the skin of a potato or a sweet potato. And that's where my husband and I, he'll never eat the skin of a sweet potato, but I will, because I know it's good for me. So if you're one of those people who can tolerate the skins, do it. You'll get more antioxidant power for it. Okay, so now I will take you to my list. It's not my list. I think this is the CDC actually, or maybe it was the American Dietetic Association put this list together. What foods have the most antioxidants? So I'm going to go through the first 7. Small red beans, wild blueberries, red kidney beans, pinto beans. So look at that. Like in the first 4, 3 of them are beans. We also know that the people who live the longest in the world eat beans every day. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about diets and beans at the end. So cultivated blueberries. So we talked about wild blueberries are number 2. Cultivated blueberries, and that means just the kind that you, sometimes you can go to Whole Foods and you can get wild blueberries for like 4 times as much money as cultivated blueberries. If that's what you're into, go ahead and have at it. But that's just the difference. A cultivated blueberry is like a farmed blueberry that's been bred for that. Cranberries, artichokes. We'll go into the next group of 7. So here we're going to have a lot more berries. Blackberries, prunes. Prunes, believe it or not, a lot of people think of prunes and they think of their grandparents, but prunes, they actually taste really good. They have a ton of antioxidants and a ton of fiber. They're super, super good for you. All a prune is a dried plum. So if you like plums, you probably like prunes. Raspberries, strawberries, red delicious apples, Granny Smith apples. These are all with the skins on, guys. And pecans, or pecans, however you say it. I never know how to say it correctly. The next 7 are sweet cherries. Woo! I buy just the regular frozen blueberries and a big bag of frozen sweet cherries at Wegmans, and I make shakes in the morning with them or after I work out. I just put a little either scoop of protein or Greek yogurt, whatever I like in there. But it's a great like antioxidant powered shake. You could always just put it in whatever kind of nut milk you like and have at it. Black plums, so an undried prune. Black russet potatoes with the skins on, regular plums, gala apples, and dark leafy greens. Remember what I said about leafy greens. If you tear them instead of cutting them with a knife, you'll get even more antioxidants. So I'll talk a little bit about fruits. I gave you like the list of the top 21 things with antioxidants in them, but that doesn't mean that peaches or grapes don't have a lot of antioxidants as well. So fruits are high in antioxidants, they're packed with vitamins, and they're beneficial in so many ways. We know that from studies, we know that it reduces inflammation in your airways. So people who may have asthma have fewer asthma attacks just by eating 2 pieces of fruit a day. So fruits that also have really high antioxidants are things like cranberries, grapes, peaches, raspberries, strawberries, figs, cherries, berries, guava, oranges. Just fruits in general are going to be great for you. And when you dry them, take the water out of them, the antioxidant power is even higher, which is kind of weird because usually people think fresher is better. But I'm going to give you a recipe at the end of this for just a really quick homemade trail mix that's got tons of antioxidant power, and we use some dried fruits for that. And they're also a healthy snack. You could just put a couple of, dried prunes in your purse, or, dried apples in your purse, and keep them around for a healthy snack. Next, we'll talk about vegetables. So broccoli, spinach, carrots, potatoes are all high in antioxidants. Actually, the vegetable with the most amount of antioxidants in the world are canned brine artichokes and brine. So you don't have to have them fresh. You don't have to go through all the work like my grandmother does, steaming them. You could just buy the hearts in the can and throw them in your salad, or you can make yourself some artichoke dip, and you'll get a lot of antioxidants. Also, cabbage, asparagus, avocados, beets, anything that's, even though we just looked at this gray thing that has a ton of antioxidants, anything that's really colorful will also have a lot of antioxidants. Spices and herbs we're going to talk about next. So using spices in your cooking is really good. So there's two ways to go about this. You could go with your dried herbs and spices. Things like cinnamon, oregano, turmeric. Everybody knows turmeric is an antioxidant powerhouse. You can throw these kinds of things in your dressings. You just look for recipes that use them. If you're not familiar with cooking with herbs and spices, you could just do something like, if you saute onions for any reason, to make anything, to make a soup or a sauce, for any reason, just take some flat leaf parsley, chop it up, fresh flat leaf parsley, chop it up, and throw it in the pan as soon as those onions hit the pan. So this is something that a wonderful chef named Marcella Hazan did. And she didn't, I don't think she knew the antioxidant power of that, but later on somebody researched it. And you're going to wind up with more iron, more nutrients, and tons of antioxidants. And onions already have antioxidants, but you're basically going to triple your antioxidant power, and your food's going to taste a lot better. But she's a wonderful chef, and that was great advice. All your food's going to taste better too if you do that. It'll look better. It'll have bright green flecks in it. So we talked about rough chopping or tearing things to get more antioxidant power. And you can use herbs to get more antioxidant power also. So they'll alter the flavor, of course, but you have to find out what you like. And I don't know if anybody I've ever met has not liked the taste of parsley when it's been sauteed in your onions. It's pretty benign. After that, nuts and seeds, so things like walnuts, hazelnuts, pistachios, almonds, cashews, macadamia nuts, even your peanut butter sandwich will have antioxidant power. Drinks. The things that you'll get the most antioxidant bang for your buck are things like unsweetened coffee, tea, black tea, green tea, and just herbal teas. Those will all have a lot of antioxidants in them. The key is really to find things that you like. And if you must have them sweetened, putting, like I said, a teaspoon of sugar into your coffee isn't the end of the world. It's not going to hurt you. Or you could use something like stevia, or even honey would work as well. So we'll give you a few recipes. One, my favorite one, this is, a lot of times people get scared because they feel like nuts have a lot of calories. But research shows that people who eat like 2 ounces of nuts every day, and now multiple studies, lose more belly fat when they're dieting than people who don't. The Green Mediterranean diet, which you may have heard of, basically is a Mediterranean diet, but they took out a little bit of the meat that people would normally eat and replaced it with plant products like either a shake or nuts, a handful of walnuts. Those people who ate the extra nuts and less meat, which is kind of opposite of what a lot of our research tells us here. A lot of people believe that the more protein you get, so meat has more protein than nuts, lose more weight. But these people did not. The people who had the plant protein and the walnuts lost twice as much abdominal fat, which is negatively tied to inflammation. So nuts are great. They're high in fiber, high in antioxidants. They'll make you feel fuller longer, and they're high in healthy fats. So for a trail mix, you want something like, you just get a big container, like those, Rubbermaid big bowls with the snap-on lids, and you put in a half a cup of whatever kind of nuts you like. So here I have walnuts, almonds, hazelnuts. You could use cashews, my husband loves those. A half a cup of, so that's a half a cup of each. Half a cup of chopped prunes or figs if you like. A half a cup of dry cranberries. A quarter cup of dark chocolate chips. You could use dry blueberries, doesn't really matter, whatever kind of dry fruit you like. And then if you wanted to have, and make sure all of these things are unsweetened. If you're getting the nuts, make sure they're not roasted in any kind of seed oils. Get dry roasted nuts. Look for also nuts that aren't already coated in salt. If you want a little bit of flavor on these things, you could use like a half a teaspoon or just shake some gingerbread spice on them. You could get just the gingered, like the crystallized ginger, you could put that in there and then use a little ginger spice and cardamom. You could, the possibilities are endless. You just find the nice warm spices that you like and use them in there. Or you could do wasabi. It's really up to you how you want to spice these things. But it's, again, super healthy, chock full of antioxidants, and makes you feel full for a long time. After that, I'll talk a minute. I have a picture of the Mediterranean anti-inflammatory plate. So, Mediterranean diet is already very anti-inflammatory. I mentioned the green Mediterranean diet. I'm going to use this as our My Plate model rather than the My Plate. So, if you take a look at your plate, you've got a section for a protein, so a quarter of the plate's a protein. Quarter of the plate is a healthy carb like a whole grain or a starchy veg. And the other half is like a salad, vegetable. Okay. So with this, we're looking at your protein being fish or plant-based. Lots of veg, half that plate is veg. You're looking at a whole grain or a healthy starchy vegetable. And once or twice a week, you're eating meat like a poultry. And rarely are you having red meat. So a quick fix using this plate is something like a Buddha bowl. So with your Buddha bowl, a Buddha bowl is really, it started off, I think, as like something vegetarian, so that's friendly. It's also really easy. It looks just like your My Plate thing, but it's in a bowl, it's really easy to eat. You don't necessarily really have to cook anything. So for instance, let's think of our healthy carb. It's going to be something like your whole grains that you can, cook a whole bunch of in advance and then just have it in the fridge like you meal prepped it. It could be quinoa, farro, brown rice, things like that. It could be you just cube up potatoes and, cook them on a sheet pan. It could be sweet potatoes, cook the same way. If you want less calories, you could do something like squash, like spaghetti squash, butternut squash, acorn squash, zucchini. So that. Then you're going to have a healthy protein. Plant-based protein has the most antioxidants, then fish. So plant-based proteins are tofu, tempeh, things like that. Beans are things like your frozen edamame. All you have to do is like microwave it for 30 seconds if you want, or just leave it in your lunch bag and it'll thaw out. Black beans, lentils, red beans, garbanzo beans, all really healthy proteins. Also, fatty fish like salmon, think like a poke bowl. Any fish is okay, so you could even use like a can of tuna. You could use frozen shrimp. It takes 8 minutes, like under cold running water, to thaw it out. And then, if you're into sardines and anchovies, they're actually really healthy. I get a lot of throw up noises when I talk about that, so that's there for those of you who like it, and if you don't, I'm not going to push it. So I'm going to give you a quick guide to cooking beans, because I think in our culture, in a typical Western American culture, it's not super common, but it doesn't have to be off-putting. So lentils are really the beans that will cook really fast. You don't have to soak them, and you don't have to get them out of a can. They'll cook in 20 minutes in boiling water, start to finish. You just boil until they're firm. You pour it through a sieve, and then you can finish it off with your favorite sauce or dressing. My favorite thing to do with lentils is a recipe called mujadara, and it's a Lebanese recipe. It's basically like if you like French onions, like it's just brown basmati rice with French onions and lentils. It's to die for. You can spice it Middle Eastern if you want. You could look up this recipe, Mugadarrah, mujadara. It's delicious. It's super easy, super healthy. So lentils are a really fun way to get your protein in quickly. Canned beans are great too. You just open them, drain them, rinse them off, and use them. Go right ahead. Edamame or mukimami are just those. They're just soybeans. They're a complete protein. They're super healthy. You can buy them frozen and just eat them. Same thing. Put them in your salad. Put them right on your Buddha bowl. Tofu. There are many, many ways to do tofu. If you're in a hurry, you just want to make sure that you flatten it out. So you take it out of its container. You put it on a dish with a piece of a napkin or something. You put another dish on top of it, face up, and put a weight on it. So I just use my tea kettle and I put it right on top. You leave it there for 15 minutes, cut it up into chunks, put your favorite spice on it, and you can air fry it or put it in the oven for 15 to 20 minutes at 500, 475. And you'll have a nice crispy tofu. It tastes really good. It'll take the flavor of anything. I haven't met anybody who tastes and is like, oh, this is gross, because it really doesn't taste like anything. So it's what you do to it. And the options are really endless. So after that, so we've got our protein, we've got our carb. You can put whatever vegetables you want in there. A lot of times I like to just buy frozen veggies and thaw them out if I'm running out of time, or pre-cut veggies. Your healthy fat is the next thing you want to think about. So think about a dressing, an olive oil dressing. Olive oil is your healthy fat. You could use a cashew-based dressing and just put it through your bullet blender or something like that. You could use an avocado-based dressing. You could use a tapenade. You could sprinkle it with nuts and seeds. Store-bought dressings are okay. Just read the label. A really good one that's local is one called Greek Goddess. That's a really good one. It's just like olive oil, lemon. It's delicious and it's locally made. So after healthy fats, your Buddha template. So we just talked about everything that could go in your Buddha bowl, but I want to give you some real ideas. So you could, do a sweet potato, put it in your bowl. You could put a half a cup of black beans next to that, peppers, salsa, Buddha bowl. Really easy, simple, easy, super healthy. Italian, you could take tuna packed in olive oil, drain it, squirt a lemon. You could use white potatoes that have just either been boiled or you could have roasted them and just pull them out of the fridge. Basil, tomatoes, cucumbers, Italian dressing. Call it a day. It's delicious. Thai, you could use edamame, brown rice, broccoli, cashews, peppers, peanut sauce, and you could just buy peanut sauce at Wegmans or Tops, or you could make your own. There's I don't know, I'm on Pinterest. I have 15 recipes that I really like so far. But your possibilities here are endless. So last but not least, I'll just kind of go over why an anti-inflammatory diet, it might sound like a lot of work because it cuts a lot of convenience food out of your diet. But it can be really easy and not stressful, especially if you just follow easy templates like this. It's totally fine to shop for your pre-prepped fruits and veggies. Stock up on things like herbal tea, keep them iced, have them in your fridge, have them easy to access so that you're not tempted to go get some 600 calorie iced coffee or something. Or the Boathouse Farms 400 calorie smoothie at the store. Save your healthy nuts and fresh fruit. Keep them on hand for snacking or dried fruit. Have frozen vegetables on hand. They're quick and easy for weeknight meals. And when you cook a protein or carb, make enough for a few meals. And it's really easy meal prep. If you're cooking, if you have 5 people in your family, 5 chicken breasts, so make 15 and you save them, and then it makes it really easy to have bowls later on. Just have something quick and easy to grab. So that is basically an anti-inflammatory diet. You don't have to follow any specific plan. It can be really easy and it can save your life. So good luck.